Leafs fan, let me ask you something right away. Have you ever imagined Sidney Crosby wearing blue and white, skating on Toronto ice, carrying the maple leaf on his chest? It's almost like thinking of Wayne Gretzky spending his entire life with the Oilers without ever leaving until he did. But in Crosby's case, that idea feels even more distant, almost an impossible dream. Something that only exists in bar discussions, in sports radio broadcasts, or in the imagination of those who believe in miracles in the NHL market. And you can't be blamed if you've ever caught yourself fantasizing about that scene. After all, Crosby isn't just a great player. He is the embodiment of modern hockey. The guy who, since entering the league in 2005, completely changed what it meant to be a superstar. Except, unlike so many idols we've seen switch jerseys at the end of their careers, Crosby has never given any sign that he intends to leave Pittsburgh. On the contrary, every gesture, every word, and every contract signed reinforces the same message. He was, and will be a Penguin until his last game. But before we dive into what this almost romantic loyalty from Crosby really means, it's worth revisiting the journey that made him such an untouchable icon. Because when we talk about Sidney Crosby, we're not just talking about stats, titles, or individual awards. We're talking about someone who, while still very young, was carried like a messianic promise, a prodigy expected to save a franchise in crisis, and who not only met the expectations, he surpassed them at a level that was almost unimaginable. In 2005, the Penguins won the draft lottery and selected Crosby as the first overall pick. At that moment, Pittsburgh wasn't exactly the dream destination. It was an unstable franchise with financial uncertainty, still relying on the last sparks of the legendary Mario Lemieux, who was already at the end of his career. But Crosby's arrival, despite still playing at a high level, he didn't just represent a short-term, he brought hope. He was a kid from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, with quick hands, absurd vision on the ice, and maturity that seemed incompatible with his age. And what happened next, every hockey fan knows. In 2009, Crosby lifted his first Stanley Cup as the youngest captain in history to do so. In 2016 and 2017, back-to-back championships came, consolidating a legacy already written in golden letters. Along the way, there were 2 Hart trophies as regular season MVP, 2 Conn Smythe trophies as playoff MVP, 8 All-Star appearances, and of course, the most iconic moment of his international career, the golden goal in Vancouver 2010, which gave Canada the Olympic gold medal against the United States. Now, you might be asking yourself, if this guy has already achieved all that, why are there trade rumors? The answer is simple. The Penguins aren't the same anymore. The team that once dominated the league has aged, lost depth, and despite still having historic names like Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang alongside Crosby, the results just don't come anymore. In the last 3 years, Pittsburgh has missed the playoffs, something almost unthinkable for a franchise used to fighting at the highest level. And the last time they advanced past the second round was back in 2017, in that same back-to-back championship season. It was in this frustrating scenario that Crosby's agent Pat Brisson let slip a phrase that shook the entire market. If Pittsburgh fails again, Crosby may end up playing somewhere else. And that was it. That's all it took. Headlines exploded everywhere. Radio shows in Toronto already imagined the dream trade. Insiders speculate about values and favorite destinations. Leafs, Rangers, Avalanche, even the Oilers. Every fan base dreamed of seeing the legendary veteran as a final piece for a championship run. But then, came Crosby's direct response, and he left no room for interpretation. In an interview with The Athletic, he was firm, almost blunt. "This is where I want to be. I love this place." Just like that. While handing out tickets to Penguins fans alongside Malkin in one of those community events that have always marked his career, Crosby shut down the subject. There is no negotiation, no possibility. He isn't going anywhere. And that's precisely what makes Crosby different. While many stars look for new horizons when they realize their team can no longer compete, he insists on remaining loyal. The symbolic value of that is massive. He signs contract worth $8.7 million, a reference to his number 87, when he could demand much more on the open market. He remains embraced by the Pittsburgh community, walking the streets, chatting with fans, being part of local life. He isn't just a captain of a team. He is the face of city. Now, let's do an exercise of imagination. What if Crosby were actually traded to the Leafs? What would the impact be? First, the cost would be absurd. We're talking about first-round picks, young prospects, and probably one or two established players going the other way. To put it simply, a franchise would have to give up practically its entire future for a few years just to have the privilege of adding Crosby. But would it be worth it? For many, yes, because Crosby still delivers at a high level. At 38 years old, he maintains a points per game average that most players in their prime would love to achieve. He dominates faceoffs, is efficient on the power play, contributes on the penalty kill, and still dictates the pace of the game like few in the history of the sport. On the Leafs, he could be the piece that transforms an already powerful offense, led by Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, into something unstoppable. Imagine a power play with Crosby, Matthews, and Nylander. It would be practically unfair. But that's just a fantasy. Because deep down, Crosby has already made it clear he will never leave Pittsburgh. And here's the point. Crosby isn't just a player. He is part of a franchise's identity. He is to the Penguins what Kobe Bryant was to the Lakers, what Derek Jeter was to the Yankees, what Tim Duncan was to the Spurs. A figure that cannot be measured only by stats or trophies, but by what he represents within a community. Think about it. Why would Crosby trade that? He has already won everything. He has already earned eternal respect. He has already carved his name into history. Winning somewhere else wouldn't give him anything he doesn't already have. But finishing his career where it all began, alongside Malkin and Letang, raising his stick to the Pittsburgh fans. Now that is an eternal legacy. And that's precisely the dilemma many fans face. On one side, the selfish desire to see Crosby on their team, to imagine one last dance toward the Stanley Cup. On the other, the understanding that some stories simply cannot be broken. Crosby and the Penguins are inseparable. And maybe that is the last great lessons the kid offers us. In a sport increasingly driven by business, money, and trades, there's still room for loyalty, for identity, for true love for franchise. So, Leafs fan, you can keep dreaming. It doesn't hurt to imagine Crosby wearing blue and white. But reality is clear. He will end his career the way he started it, in the black and gold of the Penguins. And in the end, maybe that is the most beautiful way to write his final line in the NHL's book. Now, let me ask you, would you like to see Crosby chase one last title outside of Pittsburgh? Maybe even in Toronto? Or do you prefer that he finish his career loyal to the team that drafted him? Leave your opinion in the comments, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Because this story will still spark a lot of debate until the day Crosby finally hangs up his skates.